and welcome to Excuse Me Miss, a site that I have set up for while I am studying my graduate diploma in education. I am reading today from a book called Into That Forest by Lewis Nara. I am actually dealing with the novel on Excuse Me Miss. There's a lot of resources and questions and children can follow along. It is only an educational site for myself. It's part of an assessment. I don't intend to actually sell anything from it, but if you happen to stumble across it, that's what it is. I'm going to be reading the first few pages of Into That Forest and talking about the way language is used to set character. It's taken from the point of view of Hannah O'Brien, a 6-year-old girl. She and her friend Becky, through a disaster, there's a flood, they're swept away from Hannah's family and are rescued by two thylacines. It is set at the late end of the 1800s, late end of the 1800s, 19th century. This is unedited. This is my realistic reading. It's just to give you an idea of the voice that is carried through for Hannah. And that becomes very self-explanatory even in the first page. Me name be Hannah O'Brien and I be 76 years old. Me first thing is an apology. Me language is bad 'cause I lost it and had to learn it again. But here's me story and I be glad to tell it before I hop the twig. I were born in Tasmania, born not in a hospital, but here in the back blocks, in this actual house. It's crumbling round me ears now, but the roof hardly leaks, and if I chop enough wood, I can heat the place when it snows. Though I live here by myself, I am not lonely. I got a wedding photograph of me mother and me father, when men wore beards and sat down for the picture, while me mother wears a wedding dress and stands beside him. And there's me father's harpoon hanging from the living room wall with its cracked wooden handle and rusted blade. The only new thing is the cabinet with a radio in it, which Mr. Dixon down at the general store gave me. I can't hack it. There always be mongrel music in it, like it's shouting all the time. Anyway, I'd sooner yabber to myself than listen to those voices inside that box. I reckon I need new curtains. These are a bit dusty and fraying, but they keep out the summer light when it's so strong it hurts me eyes. I think me uncle built this house. He gave it to me father. It were a present. At that time, we were the only house for miles and miles. Me father wanted to live in a place near the water. If not the sea, then a river. Me mother liked rivers, and so the house were a give and take for both of them. From the veranda we could almost touch the Munro River as it flowed down to the sea. I had no brothers or sisters. I don't know why. They were a problem, I think. I'd hear me mother crying buckets in me father's arms and hear him say, like to a child, there, we got Hannah. Me first memories, well, the thing is, and this be strange when I think about it, but me first memories, they are really me father's. Maybe not even his memories, maybe his stories. I'd drop into a swoon of gladness when he came to me bedroom to put me to sleep and he'd tell me about his adventures. He were a whaler, and when he came back after travelling the seas, he'd tell me these stories about places and things he'd set eyes on. I suppose me mind made them me own, so I thought it was me, Hannah, in the Philippines, and I could see two black men in a boat, the sort hacked out of a log, and they were waiting for a whale shark. When it came, one fisherman jumped out of the boat into the back of the whale shark and rode it like it were a brumby, and at the same time he stabbed it in the back till it croaked. In the South Seas, in water so clear you could see right down to the bottom where queer fish swim, a fisherman jumped into the sea with a banana in his mouth. He spitted bits of the banana at a huge groper which gobbled them up, all the time coming closer and closer till the fisherman caught that big fish in his bare hands. There were another time when me father were at the bow and a big whale, sperm whale, big as a house, were harpooned, and the whale boat, stuck fast to the wounded whale, were dragged along at a wild speed towards the sun on the horizon till the monster carked it of exhaustion. One time me father were at anchor in Western Australia when he seen a gin on the beach, and she was singing a song, an uncanny song like you sing to ghosts, but it called to the whales. One whale, a minkie, came to shore, sucked in by her song, and beached itself like a sacrifice for her. On the Tasmanian coast, near South Bruny, a whale were winched into the flensing yard, where a big puncture were cut into the back of the creature, and an old man, he crippled with tuberculosis so bad that he walked on all fours, were put into it, like a plug down a hole. He was pulled out half a day later, and all the workers were thunderstruck, because this fellow could walk, and he was straight-backed. He had been cured. I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to say, though, that the writing starts with Hannah, and it starts off quite large writing, and then it goes over to the bit where she talks about the curtains being too strong for her, stopping the sun from getting in when it's too strong for her eyes. Then we break into the section about her dad, and that section about her dad's story, where he goes, we've got the South Seas, we've got Western Australia, we've got the Eastern States. There's a lot of stories, and you probably know that it's one idea per paragraph. That's the way English works, one idea per paragraph, and she has many ideas, but one central story, where she's got story as memories. And that goes right through to here, to the bit about the man being cured. And if you look at my site, I actually have a picture of that, of being given the whale cure, where people would go into it and the heat would actually give them a few days of feeling better. And it was also used for arthritis as well. Here it talks about it being for tuberculosis. It's often used for arthritis. The writing, the use of language in this comes through really well in the writing. Hannah says that she's 76 years old, but she doesn't write the way we would expect a 76-year-old to write. She doesn't speak in that tone of voice. She uses me instead of my, and spitted instead of spat. Her language is still that of a 6-year-old because, as she tells us, she lost it and had to get it back again. There are some unusual words that we wouldn't use today. We wouldn't use the word such as gin. That is considered an inappropriate word. It used to be used to describe an Aboriginal woman. Our generation wouldn't use it, but an older generation person would. And again, we're placed in that time through her language. So language is very important to this, and the way Hannah talks both to us as the reader, to her audience, but also when she's showing conversation between herself and Becky, that changes. And it changes again when she is looking back and giving conversation. She's retelling a story or retelling conversation where she's telling other people's speech, and her speech changes. One thing I found was my speech changed. Now, I don't have the inflection that I had during the reading, and yet every time I've read this, I take on that voice. It just starts to happen naturally. I feel as if I'm an old woman looking back through a young child's eyes. I'm a West Australian. Our Australian inflection doesn't tend to be quite as pronounced as those from the eastern states, and yet I find that because I have spent time around people from Tasmania and Queensland, I took on that inflection. My voice did raise with that final inflection that Australians are so famous for having. I don't notice it so much here in WA. It does exist, but not quite as much. So that's Into the Forest. I speak a lot about the English use, the language, the textuality of the language, the way it informs the novel, the way literacy and other literatures inform the novel. We have allusions to Moby Dick, Shakespeare, and there are other forms of literacy which are and literary devices that we find within it. We're shown a lot rather than told. It's a beautiful piece of storytelling, and I would encourage everyone to read it in full. It is a wonderful novel. It feels like a long novel because there are no there are no chapters. It starts and it keeps going. And it gets, a few reviews have put it down for that, but I think it's a very natural storytelling thing. It actually plays into that feeling of being told a story that is a long time in the telling, that it's not just something that happened to Becky and Hannah for a couple of days. This was 4 years of their life, plus it's had an effect for what comes later when they're reintroduced back to society. So I'd really like you to read it. I think you'll find it fascinating, whether you're a teacher or a child. This is a brilliant book. It's actually apparently aimed at, say, the 8-year-olds, but I actually think that given the themes in that, it's all ages. You could put it in any classroom from possibly 8 years old and put it through to your year 12 students, and they would get so much from it. It's a wonderful novel. I actually read it as a YA novel when I was judging the Aurealis Awards a few years ago, and it stayed with me. It's one of the few books I kept. I very rarely keep my books. So it's a wonderful novel. Read it and discover its themes for yourself. Have a great day. Bye.